Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mobile VR Reviews. I'm your host, Guy Manspeed, and today we're taking a look at Gunship Battle2 VR for the Gear VR. Gunship Battle2 VR was created by the South Korean studio Joy City and was released November 25th, 2016 on the Gear VR store, where it is available for $9.99. The game is a VR sequel to the developer's Android and iOS title Gunship Battle, and is also the company's first VR title. Gunship Battle2 VR puts you in the cockpit of various attack helicopters as ace pilot Dylan Reece as you fly 20 missions spread over 2 campaigns taking place in the Middle East and South America. The story is delivered through text briefings at the start of each mission, but it's not particularly memorable or important. Each mission has you either wiping out an enemy base or defending a set of friendly targets with some variations. Completing a mission grants you access to the next mission, plus a few $100s of in-game currency, as well as a bonus item or cash prize from a random choosing game. You start off with one basic chopper equipped with guns and rockets, and from there you use your hard-earned cash to upgrade or buy new gunships. The upgrade system is a bit weird where you need both cash and items to increase your armor and weapon stats, and it seems overly complex for this type of game. Both upgrading and purchasing helicopters are pretty costly, so expect to grind missions to be able to do either. Buying and upgrading grants access to more weapon systems such as guided missiles, and each helicopter has a different special ability such as flares, EMP bombs, or attack drones. Chain gun and rocket ammunition regenerates quickly over time, but guided missiles are finite and cannot be restocked during a mission. The missions themselves are quite entertaining. You'll be taking on trucks, tanks, boats, turrets, and more. There's not much strategy besides find the target, shoot at the target, and dodge the enemy projectiles, but it's satisfying to unleash a salvo of rockets into a row of tanks or missile batteries, and taking down a battleship alone is fun every time. The levels are fairly small and contained, which feels limiting, but it also means you're never wandering aimlessly looking for your next target. The first 10 missions do feel rather easy, but once you've played through all 20 on normal difficulty, you unlock the hard, and subsequently very hard difficulty levels, which adds extra challenge and replayability. This game requires a gamepad to play, which isn't surprising. The left analog stick controls your forward, back, and side-to-side movement, and the right stick controls your altitude, with buttons and triggers taking care of weapons. Yaw control, that is rotating left and right, is controlled by the head tracking. You either turn in a swivel chair and the cockpit turns with you, or you can tilt your head past a threshold and the chopper will quickly rotate in that direction. This is the only control scheme available, and stick or button remapping is not supported. The control scheme definitely works, but the lack of stick-controlled yaw takes away from the realism. Combine that with the fact that the chopper responds instantly and accelerates to its movement speed instantaneously, and this game feels less like flying a helicopter and more like playing a first-person shooter with variable height. I don't exactly play a lot of helicopter simulators, but I have played a hell of a lot of Grand Theft Auto. While those helicopters used simplified models, they provided enough flight dynamics to give you the impression of piloting a helicopter. The feeling of flight control in Gunship Battle2 VR is far behind the helicopters of even Vice City or San Andreas. The graphics are comparable to high-resolution N64 or PS2 graphics, or the Android or iOS predecessor of this game. The cockpit is detailed and includes authentic-looking instrumentation, and boasts a working and useful radar screen and ammo counter for missiles. But while the cockpit looks the part at first glance, the majority of the instrumentation is actually just static images. This pales in comparison to the fully realized cockpit of Overflight, with its actuated gauges and flight stick. Plus, when you switch to a new helicopter, the cockpit and instrumentation layout remains exactly the same, which seems like a lazy oversight. The terrain in water is done well enough, though the landscapes do look rather sparse. The models for the buildings and enemies are actually quite detailed, so much so that they look slightly out of place with the terrain. Scale is appropriate for the most part, with the obvious exception being the soldiers that are bigger than the pickup trucks. Weapon effects, on the other hand, are pretty basic. Chain gun shots, rockets, and missiles, both yours and the enemy's, are just different shades of glowing orbs, and weapon impacts are larger glowing orbs. As you can see from the video footage, the draw distance for both terrain and enemies isn't very far, so expect to see quite a bit of pop-up during gameplay. The maximum allowed flight altitude is kept pretty low, probably to prevent you from seeing even more pop-up, but it also greatly limits the sense of flying you'd expect to get. The game is rendered in stereo, but the game action is quite far away relative to the camera's IPD, so you don't get a great sense of depth. Music comes in the form of epic military scoring during the missions, with an orchestral fanfare upon successfully completing a mission. Sound effects get the job done. Guns, rockets, and missiles have noticeably different sounds, but explosions tend to crackle more than boom with power. Voice acting is minimal, with a few soundbites telling you to read the briefing, alerting you to a new threat, or congratulating you on a job well done. As mentioned before, the bulk of the communication is done through text, of which there is too much and it cannot be skipped, so you'll have to wait through it every time while you're grinding missions. On the plus side, the game is quite comfortable. Movement happens with almost no acceleration or deceleration period, and all rotation is controlled by head tracking. Motion sickness should be kept to a minimum, but those more sensitive to translation movements will likely still feel it. But what the game gains in comfort, it loses in immersion. Part of the problem lies with the aforementioned controls and the flight model into which they feed. Level design takes part of the blame as well, with terrain being structured to resemble corridors and your maximum altitude being restricted to below the mountaintops. This only increases the feeling of this game being a first-person shooter. Lastly, the graphics don't convey a strong sense of depth, and you never really get the feeling of height. These all work together to keep you from committing to the suspension of disbelief needed to produce a convincing sense of presence. One more thing I have to mention is the overheating. I don't usually bring this up in reviews, but this game takes it to new levels of crazy. I've had almost 30 play sessions in this game, and the majority of them have been ended by either game crash or, more frequently, overheating. After 15 to 20 minutes of play, my S6 Edge Plus gets incredibly hot, and out of any game I've reviewed so far, this game definitely overheats the quickest. I have to say the missions are fun, and the multiple difficulty levels help keep replays challenging. If you're into unlocking and upgrading every helicopter, you'll definitely be doing this for a while. But the game is kept from reaching its full potential by the lack of a more realistic flight model and controls, and the limited feeling of depth or height in the environments. As I said earlier, it really plays more like a first-person shooter than a helicopter sim. It's a mixed bag that will likely appeal to those newer to VR, but the experience falls short when compared to other titles. Gunship Battle2 VR has enjoyable missions and some replay value going for it, but N-Space, Omega Agent, and Overflight all offer better flight experiences, so take that into consideration before you shell out $10 for this one. Thanks for watching. Got something to say about this video? An opinion of the game itself, or VR in general? Leave a comment to let me know what you think. And if you like what you saw, and you want to see more of this, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Remember, there's a new video every week. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.